What if Stannis Baratheon defeated the Lannisters at Blackwater? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The roar of battle swells over the waters of Blackwater Bay. The air is thick with the acrid stench of wildfire and the metallic tang of blood. Stannis Baratheon's forces surge forward against the Mudgate, their red and gold banners flickering in a world of fire that burns even in the rushes. The city gates groan under the weight of the battering ram. On the ground, Tyrion Lannister, bloodied and barely able to stand, shouts commands to the men around him.
Archers, knock and draw! Hold the line, for your king!
He stumbles unsteadily, using his axe to support himself as he nearly falls over. The wildfire explosions in the river threaten to knock him off his feet. Despite that, Stannis and his men press forward, raising their shields as the arrows rain. He and the few Lannister defenders on the ground try to nip at their heels, taking out stragglers and trying to disrupt their formation. Despite their best efforts, Stannis' men press on, carrying scaling ladders and starting to climb the walls. Seeing this, Tyrion looks to one of the Kingsguard, who accompanied him out the gate.
Sir Mandon, take your men and...
He stumbles as his words are cut short by the sight of a sword slashing toward him. It is Mandon Moore. He barely sees his sword flash, but the knight now raises it up and prepares to strike him down. But before the next blow can land, Podrick Payne appears, a dagger in hand. With surprising strength, Podrick drives the blade into Mandon's neck, ending the knight's treachery. But Tyrion drops to the dirt as sand begins to pool in the ground. Podrick drags him away from the bloodshed. Together, the pair disappear in the chaos. At the gates, Stannis himself strides through the shattered defenses, his eyes cold and unyielding. His soldiers flood into King's Landing, overwhelming the remnants of resistance. Once he breaches the gate, the remaining Lannisters in gold cloaks lay down their weapons. Soon, the banners are raised over the gatehouse as the city surrenders. By the time Stannis' forces reach the Red Keep, his men sweep through the castle, swords drawn, searching for survivors or resistance. Sir Justin Massey enters the throne room and gasps before calling Stannis over and saying he found the Queen. The room doors creak open, revealing Cersei Lannister slumped on her seat, blood dripping from her mouth. An empty vial rests in her hand, the smell of poison lingering in the air. Around her, the bodies of the women of the court lie scattered, some with slit throats, others crumpled as if they surrendered to despair. Sir Ilyn Payne's work is evident in the blood-streaked floor.
Leave no corner unsearched. The mother is dead, but her spawn is still here.
Hours pass, and the castle is secured. Joffrey is found trying to escape with Sir Meryn and Kettleblack, but there is no sign of Prince Tommen or Princess Marcella. The children are gone. Stannis' hand tightens on the hilt of his sword. This is not good. So long as one of the children still lives, the Lannisters still have a viable claim to the throne. Outside the city, Podrick Payne carries a weakened Tyrion Lannister through the shadows. They stumble through the roads, which are now choked with fleeing refugees. Tyrion clutches his wounded side, his face pale but determined.
The city is fallen, my lord. Where should we go? Rosby. Castle Rosby. Will it be safe? Safe? Nowhere safe with Stannis here. But better there than King's Landing.
But despite his sardonic words, Tyrion allows himself to be led, each step pulling him further away from the city. With the capital his, Stannis begins to clean up the court and rebuild the capital in preparation for Tywin's arrival, as he just barely beat him to the city. He wastes no time in repairing the capital, fixing up the gates, clearing the Blackwater Bay, and strengthening the walls. Cersei is dead. There are still many others who need to be punished. The first among them is Varys, Pycelle, and Sir Meryn Trant, who are all beheaded. Joffrey, though, is a different punishment. With the capital now secure, Stannis now deems it safe enough to bring Melisandre from Dragonstone. The square outside the Great Sept of Baelor is packed with silent onlookers. Bound and gagged, Joffrey Baratheon thrashes against the stakes of the pyre. The small folk murmur among themselves.
Behold, the false king who led you into darkness. By the flames of R'hllor, the Nord of Night. We cleanse this city of its sin.
Joffrey's screams grow louder as the fire roars to life, and the boy's screams pierce the air, drowning out the crackle of burning wood. Some avert their eyes, others stare in horror. As the screams die down, Stannis and his retainers leave back to the Red Keep, discussing their plans to build a temple to honor the Lord of Light. Sir Davos urges Stannis to avoid future burnings after seeing this, as it might alienate the people, though Melisandre and the Queen's men urge him to make examples of all his enemies. Stannis agrees with Davos after seeing the anger the mob had. Though fanatic, the Queen's men are few, and the city is still largely inhabited by those who follow the Seven. He allows the Queen's men to build their temples, but do not allow them to burn anyone or bother the small folk. In the small, squat keep of Rosby, Tyrion Lannister sits by a hearth in the Lord Solar, nursing a goblet of wine.
My lord, how are you feeling?
Like I just slept through the last 4 wars.
Is there news of my father? He's approaching from the north, but a small band has moved ahead to Castle Rosby. We should meet them.
Let Tywin wait. The man never lacked patience.
This buys Tyrion a few minutes as the door creaks open, and Sir Adam Marbrand enters, with orders to escort Tyrion to his father's camp. Tyrion grits his teeth, draining the rest of his wine before hauling himself to his feet. Marbrand and a small mounted guard are waiting for Tyrion, who is taken to the camp a few leagues out. Tywin Lannister's pavilion is already set up as the Warden of the West awaits for him. Tyrion steps inside. He finds his father seated at a large campaign table, the map of the surrounding region spread out before him. His pale green eyes meet Tyrion's without warmth.
You took your time. I needed a moment to enjoy Rosby's renowned hospitality and lick my wounds. You'll forgive me if I'm not at my best. I've only just survived the sack of the city. You mean the city you were sent to protect? I did what I could, Father. I commanded the defense. I held the walls for as long as possible. But with Stannis' army and Joffrey's tantrums, you were sent to King's Landing to control your nephew and your sister. You were meant to ensure their foolishness did not cost us the war. And yet here we are. Control them. Have you met Joffrey? The boy's a monster, Father, and Cersei undermined every decision I made. Excuses. You were given the authority to act. If they defied you, you should have dealt with them. The failure is yours, Tyrion. I sent you to King's Landing because I thought you could prove yourself useful. You are dismissed, Tyrion. Go make yourself useful elsewhere, if you're capable of it. Of course, Father. When you get the chance, please tell me about your recent battle in the fords. Perhaps I can learn what not to do.
Tyrion waddles off, thinking back to Rosby, where Tommen is kept hidden safely within the keep under the watchful eye of the 50 Goldcloaks. He had planned to tell his father of the boy's survival, but now, with Tywin's cold rebuke ringing in his ears, he decides otherwise. As he looks out on the horizon, Tyrion notices a procession of people marching through the camp. They are a bedraggled mess, dressed in rough-spun robes, worn rags, and dented mail. They carry clubs, axes, and rusted swords. Adam Marbrand explains that they call themselves sparrows and consist of small folk, septums, and septas who survived the destruction of the war and have gathered together to petition the king for action. It was one small benefit that was no longer his problem. Stannis sits on the Iron Throne, surveying its chambers as it steps off the Lannister banners, the golden lions replaced by the fiery heart of his house. Candlelight flickers across his face. He listens to petitions. Many are from merchants and small folk in the city who ask for help in rebuilding their homes and livelihoods. Others bring grimmer news, reporting disputes between them and the followers of R'hllor. While there are no more burnings, they report fights, curses, and even a few deaths. Not all the news is so grim. With their loss at the Blackwater, the Tyrells abandoned their alliance with the Lannisters. Though they haven't bent the knee to Stannis, he believes it is only a matter of time. Meanwhile, the young wolf pledges loyalty to Stannis as king, but admits that his forces are stretched thin as he must fight both Tywin, who is now marching back through the Riverlands, and the Ironborn, who are raiding the north. The most he offers is 3,000 men already approaching Duskendale, led by Robert Glover. Although it is a small contribution, they will at least replenish his battered army. But to his surprise, there is another letter from House Martell, which reports they are sending a delegation to swear fealty to Stannis, which will be led by Prince Doran's brother, Oberyn. He is about to retire for the night, but one more figure approaches the throne. He is not wearing the fine clothes of a lord, nor the rags of the small folk. Instead, he's wearing black chainmail, a sellsword. His guardsmen move to usher him out, but the sellsword smirks and raises his hand.
Easy now, lads. I have business with the king.
What makes you think the king wishes to speak to the likes of you, scum?
I heard the new king was fair and listened to the plight of us regular folk. It seems I was mistaken. Enough. I will not have it said I ignored a man because of his station. State your business.
Bronn smiles and explains how he used to serve in Tyrion's household and how he had overheard his plans, including taking Tommen away from King's Landing. He knows where the lost lion is. In exchange for his support, Bronn demands Rosby be given to him. Stannis agrees and sends Sir Godry faring along with 100 men, promising Rosby to him if Tommen is there. The faint sounds of struggle rouse Tyrion from a restless sleep. He blinks groggily, then jolts up as he hears the sound of steel on steel. Making his way over to the wall, he sees his gold cloaks rushing with a group of men-at-arms. He spies the badge of the Fiery Heart and immediately curses himself. He sits up, instinctively reaching for his tunic. Before he can dress, the door swings open. Standing on the threshold, grinning like a cat, is Bronn.
Well, look who's still breathing. I was expecting to find only the lost lion cub here. Not you, Lord Imp. With you here, I might even get Castle Stokeworth too, eh? You always did have impeccable timing, Bronn. I thought we had an understanding. My coin for your loyalty. We did. Are you here to offer me a castle? One bigger than even this. Hope you're not offering me Harrenhal. Help me and I can give you whatever castle you want. Derry, Riverrun, Winterfell even.
Suddenly, a voice booms from the courtyard.
Sellsword! Where's the boy you're speaking of?
Tempting. But Stannis isn't the forgiving sort, and I can't exactly go back empty-handed. I promised him a lion cub. You only promised Tommen, not me. You won't be breaking any oaths by letting me go. And what's in it for me? I told you before, whatever price someone gives you, I'll match it. If I find enough fools, I might find myself Lord Paramount. All right, you've got yourself a deal. For now. You can remain here, and I'll make sure no one arrives.
An hour later, Bronn and the Baratheon men depart with Tommen in tow. Once they are gone, Podrick comes to fetch Tyrion with fresh clothes and paper given to him by Bronn. It contains a list of sellswords who Tyrion can recruit in King's Landing. Disguising themselves as commoners, the two march out and eventually join a group of sparrows passing through Rosby on their way to King's Landing. As they gather around a fire, their leader, a scrawny old man, begins to read off from the Book of the Seven, recounting verses of how it is their sworn duty to defend the faith, and explaining that it is why they are heading to King's Landing, to confront the king, as they've been hearing reports of how Stannis has abandoned the Seven and now allows unbelievers to flood the city. Tyrion listens closely and smiles to himself. For the first time since the Blackwater, he feels as if he might have some allies after all. In the Red Keep, a herald steps inside, announcing the arrival of a Dornish delegation. The lords exchange wary glances, but Stannis remains still and watches them warily. The Martells have always been a question mark, their allegiance uncertain. The Dornishmen's silks and colorful robes are a stark contrast to the somber tones of the room. At their head is Oberyn Martell. He steps in confidently as his dark eyes scan the chamber. He stops before Stannis, the small smile playing across his lips as he bows before him. The Dornish offer their forces, spears, ships, and gold in exchange for vengeance against the Lannisters. It is not a plea, but a calculated move. In particular, he wants the Mountain and Tywin's heads. Stannis listens carefully. The alliance is tempting. Dorne's forces could tip the balance. It is not as if he wasn't already planning to kill the Mountain and Tywin, but he does not trust them so easily. The Dornish have largely sat out of the war and questions why they suddenly decided to join forces with him. What's worse is the fiery and unpredictable Oberyn Martell. To prove his allegiance, the Red Viper has another revelation, that Myrcella Lannister is under the care of Prince Doran. The prince is willing to hand her over to Stannis, but only after they've killed Tywin. The chamber murmurs as Stannis considers the offer. Finally, he rises to his feet.
Very well. These terms are acceptable. But know this, I am a man of justice, and if you wish for Tywin's head, you must aid me in taking it. When I march out, Dorne will do so with me.
Very well. I will relay these terms to my brother, and you may send a representative to verify Myrcella's presence in Sunspear. An army should begin marching within a few weeks. I just hope that King's Landing is still standing by the time they arrive.
The court falls quiet at the silent jab to Stannis. The situation between the Faith and the Lord of Light has only gotten worse. Once their temples had gone up, Melisandre and other priests had gone to sermons, denouncing the Seven while their followers harassed Septons on the street, spreading tales of debauchery against the Septons. Most of them true, but not less inflammatory. Fights had become a regular occurrence, while they had obeyed Stannis' rule of no burnings and not attacking septs. They had started to target merchants selling religious icons of the Seven. The followers of the Seven did not take this lying down, though as many had taken up arms to resist these actions. The arrival of the Sparrows only further emboldened them. Some bolder members even denounced Stannis as the bringer of doom, as he filled the streets with savage Northmen and fanatic worshippers of the Lord of Light. It is only a matter of time before things boil over. Although Davos urges Stannis to try and make an example of some followers of Roller to appease the people, Melisandre takes this as bowing to the mob and tells him to stand firm. He reminds him that he has Tommen in his custody and soon Myrcella. Burning them may prove once and for all that the Lord of Light is the true god. Stannis is not so certain. He knows that this will only anger the mob and refuses. Tommen is kept in the main temple of the Lord of Light. Instead, he punishes members from both sides. Aggressors are hanged, and stern warnings are put out simply saying that both religions must get along, or he'll have the aggressor wiped out. While these actions cow some of the moderate members of both sides, the extremists take this as a challenge and begin to plot. The High Sparrow is probably the most outspoken on the side of the Seven, criticizing not just the Red Lady and King Stannis, but also members of the clergy who he deems weak. Tyrion pays close attention to this and approaches the High Sparrow after one sermon where he denounces the corruption of the faith, the sins of kings and queens, and intrusion of the Red Woman and her false god. As he approaches, the High Sparrow nods to Tyrion.
You stand among the faithful, my lord. Don't look so surprised. Even on the roads, we've heard tales of Tywin Lannister's imp. Yet here you are, listening to the woes of the common people.
A lord I may be, but surely you've also heard how Tywin treats his dear son. The father has been the only parent I've ever known.
Do you come seeking forgiveness, or something else?
I have come to serve. I have a plan that can remove the Red Lady and her unbelievers from our fair city.
You have my attention.
I know what Tommen Baratheon is. I saw my dear nephew being dragged off by Stannis' men. He's always been a pious one, so I fear for his safety. Tommen is his brother's heir, and he would be most grateful to the faith if he were liberated.
A tempting offer. But Stannis has the city, and his army is vast. A boy king would need more than blessings. He would need swords.
Your sparrows have many of those. Rusted they may be, but they can kill just the same. It would be difficult, but Hasn't the Seven always guided their believers during hard times? Think of what we may offer them. A king chosen by the faith itself.
The High Sparrow agrees and pledges his support to whatever plan Tyrion has. With that done, he has Podrick reach out to any sellswords still loyal to him. He gives these men instructions to contact the Alchemist Guild and gather whatever reserve wildfire they have left and to take it to the Temple of Light. The first sparks of rebellion flare at dawn during a prayer ceremony in the Temple of Light, where Stannis, the Red Lady, and her followers are in attendance. The High Sparrow and his followers march through the streets, chanting prayers to the Seven and calling for an end to Stannis' rule. Armed with cudgels and pitchforks, the commoners swarm the Lord of Light's temple. At the temple, the Queen's men, clad in crimson and gold, form a defensive line. The commander, Sir Axel Florent, draws his sword.
Stand firm! The Lord of Light watches over us.
The battle erupts into chaos. Both sides, filled with righteous fury, clash in a brutal melee. The sparrows have numbers, but the Queen's men have weapons and armor. The steps of the temple soon wash with blood as both sides hack and slash at each other. The High Sparrow is there, though not fighting. He chants prayers and shouts encouragement. Amid the chaos, Tyrion's sellswords slip through a side passage into the temple. They navigate the labyrinthian corridors, avoiding patrols and skirmishes as they place wildfire pots in strategic parts of the temple until they find a small chamber where Tommen is held. The few guards left are quickly cut down as Tommen is escorted away. Outside, the battle rages on. The Queen's men hold their ground, starting to cut through the Sparrow's numbers. Suddenly, a low rumble shakes the ground. The Sparrow pauses, looking around in confusion. The Queen's men shout warnings, but it's too late. The explosion tears through the temple in a blinding flash of green light. The wildfire ignites with a deafening roar, consuming the structure and everyone inside. Flames shoot skyward, and the ground trembles as the shockwave ripples through the city. The temple is gone, reduced to smoldering rubble. With it is Stannis, Melisandre, and the Queen's men. From a safe distance, Tyrion watches the plume of green fire raise over the city before making his way to the ruins and contemptuously kicks a stone over.
The Lord of Light has burned out, and the king has been returned.
He gestures for Tommen to be brought forward. Suddenly, the sparrows all erupt in cheers. They are joined by the rest of the people who are swept up by the euphoria. Tyrion allows himself a smile, as now all that is left to deal with is some loose ends. Not all of Stannis' men were killed in the ensuing chaos. The Northmen, Dornish, and all those Stormlanders who didn't follow the Lord of Light holed up in the Red Keep under the leadership of Robert Glover, Oberyn Martell, and Davos Seaworth. Tyrion goes to them with generous terms. He will not take them prisoner and allow them to leave home if they do one service for him, wiping out Tywin Lannister's army. As none of these men are friends of Tywin, they all agree. When news spreads of the recapturing of King's Landing, Tywin leaves the campaign in the Riverlands to Kevan and returns to the capital at the head of 2,000 men and trusted knights. As he enters the city, he sees a mass of people waiting to greet him, though none are cheering. Instead, they stare at him with dead eyes. As his column trains inside, the front of the ranks give way as armored sparrows rushes from behind, clutching their homemade weapons. From the streets and alleys charge the Northmen. Robert Glover leads the attack, roaring commands as his men hack through the disoriented Lannisters. The Dornish follow close behind, Oberyn Martell a blur of crimson and gold as he rides at the forefront, throwing spears and firing crossbow bolts. The Lannister knights scramble from the ranks, but the ambush is perfectly executed. A rain of projectiles from hidden Dornish archers continues to devastate their lines. The tight valley traps Tywin's forces, leaving them nowhere to retreat. At the rear, Davos Seaworth directs the Stormland remnants, cutting off any chance of escape.
Form up! Hold the line!
But his words are swallowed by the chaos. A Dornish spear impales a bannerman beside him, and his horse rears in panic. Tywin regains control, but the enemy presses closer. Oberyn's spear flashes as he rides straight for Tywin.
For Elia!
Tywin parries with his sword, but the force of the blow nearly unseats him. Laughing, the Red Viper continues to thrust his spear at him, his youth and grace giving him the advantage as he circles around Lannister. In the final moments, Tywin finds himself surrounded. his sword arm trembles slightly, the weight of inevitability sinking in. Oberyn's spear strikes true, piercing Tywin's chest and sending him crashing to the ground. Blood pools beneath him as the Lion of Castley Rock takes his last breath. As promised, Tyrion allows these men to return home, save for Oberyn, who opts to remain in King's Landing and continue hunting the Mountain and the remaining Lannisters. Meanwhile, with Tommen crowned king, Tyrion is named regent in hand. The Reach, Stormlands, and Dorne all pledge themselves to the throne. Meanwhile, he focuses on making peace with Robb, promising to return all prisoners, ice, and the bones of Sansa. He even offers to recognize Robb's rule over the North if he bends the knee, something Robb reluctantly accepts as the entire might of the South now backs Tyrion. He orders that Kevan Lannister abandon the Riverlands campaign or be branded a rebel, which he reluctantly does, though Gregor chooses to remain after hearing the charges against him. Tyrion gives Oberyn leave to hunt him down. Although the faith remains a thorn in his side, Tyrion must now contend with new players after the old players are gone. That's our theory. If you enjoyed this story and want to see it continued, like the video. If we reach 2,000 likes, a part 2 will be made. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.